The formerly drivers and teams titles might already have been won by Antonio Felix da Costa and DS Techeetah, but don't let that make you think that the last two races of the season were just an afterthought. Not only were 8 drivers in contention for second place in the championship, but victories for Nissan EDEMS and a first ever one for Mercedes offer hope that at least next season some people might be in a position to challenge DS Techeetah. On this episode of Behind the Race, we'll dissect those first ever wins for Oliver Rowland and Stoffel Vandoorne, and we'll also analyse a qualifying farce as no fewer than 4 champions failed to set a lap time for the first race. Joining me, Matt Q, is live from Italy, Michela Cerruti. How are you doing? After 6 races, you're not too tired? Your energy levels are still there?
No. I guess the drivers are more tired than us. What do you think?
Absolutely. Well, Antonio Felix da Costa, Alex Lynn, a few others, they've got to go straight on a plane over to Belgium to take part in the World Endurance Championship. So yes. I don't think they were having too much champagne last night.
No, I think that they couldn't celebrate too much, but I mean, it's their passion. I think it's one of the most beautiful jobs in the world. So I'm sure they're happy to be back in a different car, ordinary engine car, let's say. But yeah, that's how it is for them. But I think it was a weekend full of emotions, full of actions, and of course, it's not easy to jump from a car to another one. After all these races, one after the other, back to back, it's really difficult to keep up the focus, the concentration. And this is also what we could see in the last 2 races, where probably DS Techeetahs, they were a little bit maybe too relaxed, and the mistake in qualifying is one of the signs of that, probably.
Well, let's talk about that. I've called it a farce, and I think that's a fair reflection. So just to explain what happened there. So we have the Group 1 qualifying run, which is where the top 6 in the championship will go out. And they tend, as the faster guys, they tend not to do a build-up lap. They just do an out lap and then go for it. And they cut it really fine leaving the garage. They had 1 minute and 40 seconds, I think. So we had a situation in the first qualifying run where Sebastian Buemi, Andre Lotterer, Jean-Eric Verne, Antonio Felix da Costa and Lucas di Grassi were all circulating more or less on top of each other as they tried to find track space to get a clear run and set their time. Lucas di Grassi and Antonio Felix da Costa even crashing at the turn 15 hairpin. But it didn't really matter anyway, because the checkered flag for the session came out before any of them crossed the line. So none of them set a lap time and put them right to the back of the grid. I understand why they were doing it, because with track evolution, you want to get the surface in the best possible position, so you want to be last on the road. But it was a bit of a blunder, almost an unforgivable mistake. What did you make of it all?
Yes, I agree with you. I mean, let's remember that this was a new layout, so for sure it was not rubbered. And it's always better to have the last lap time or the last lap in general, because having more rubber on the track, that means that you are also probably quicker. So the intention of the drivers was to have the best performance that they could, but it's really also dangerous to do these kind of things. Probably they should have looked at each other to see that more cars were doing that strategy, and when you are there fighting to be the last to make the lap time, it's very easy to fall into this mistake. And I think that on the other side, this gave all the other drivers an opportunity to fight at the front without the 4 big champions. Which were the quickest during all these Berlin races. And this is also the reason why we had so much action, I think, during the race. But yes, I agree with you that it's an unforgivable mistake from 2 top teams and top drivers inside Formula E, but that's how it is. And at the end, no one took an advantage from the strategy.
Exactly. There was, I think, if DS Techeetah already preoccupied with winning the title, there was an opportunity for someone to sort of take the race to them, but we didn't really have that with them starting at the back. Instead, on pole position, and for the second time in his Formula E career, we had Oliver Rowland. And then not only did he set a really good lap in qualifying, but then he managed the race really well. I thought that for a guy that had quite a sizable qualifying shunt in Santiago a few rounds ago, and he admitted that knocked his confidence. He's rebuilt well, and that race was seemingly totally in his hands. I thought it was an impressive first victory for Oliver.
Yes, it was a flag-to-flag victory, which is not easy to see in Formula E, with all that chance to make mistakes during the race. He had a perfect energy management. Let's remember that to race in a Formula E is not just to race in an ordinary car, because you need to think about many things, to use properly the attack modes, chances that you have during the races, and to be also lucky not to have safety cars during this attempt of using the attack mode. And you need to defend, you need to manage the energy in a perfect way. So I think he did a perfect performance, and his teammate, which is one of the strongest and most experienced drivers in Formula E, Sebastian Buemi, I think that for sure he helped him in gaining experience, and it was a perfect reference point for Oliver, but he took all the best from it, and this was a great performance, I think, and he was just very good during all the race.
You're quite right to say about Oliver Rowland learning off Buemi, but I didn't realise it went the other way around. So during the coronavirus break, we had the esports series, and after a few races, Buemi decided he wasn't very good. So he called up Oliver Rowland, was like, right, I've helped you be quick in real life. You help me be quick on a computer. That was good. Yeah. That was good. And it was also reflective, I think, of how much progress Nissan have made. So obviously, before the team was Renault Edams, which was sort of the dominant force when Formula E first began. And Edams, as we know from dams in Formula 2, Formula 3, a quality single-seater team. But they had this thing coming into the season where the twin motor powertrain setup they were using was banned by the regulations, something the team agreed to themselves as well in the interest of the championship to keep costs down. That really meant they had to change their whole philosophy. And now they've come back for the second half of the season, having looked through all the software, having made real performance gains. And I think we'll analyse this at the end, Michela, but maybe Mercedes, they can be the ones to sort of make the championship, or sort of bring back the unpredictability that everyone talks about in Formula E.
Yes, I think that for sure the fact that the 4 champions were starting in the back, and this happened anyway also for the Techeetahs, even in the last race, and even if qualifying was basically smooth. So they were in trouble, probably with this new layout, which was more technical and a different one and new for everyone. So it was nice to see that other teams took the chance to be better than them and to find something more. And yes, I think it's also not easy for a team like Edams. And if you think about their history inside Formula E, they have always been the team to beat. Even in the very first seasons when I was racing there, I remember they had the partnership with Renault, but they were anyway always winning there, and ABT Audi was the team to beat. So I think that it's never easy to find yourself in a situation where you cannot stay there on top, and you need to stay focused and cool with your mind and try to improve and to find maybe other ways to be better and to have a more efficient powertrain and a more efficient general package of the car, maybe working also a little bit more on the setup. So I think that in this race, they showed, and even Mercedes showed with the last race, that probably next season we will have a more exciting fight, even between the manufacturers themselves, not only between the drivers.
Yeah, you've got that interesting switch between sort of student master. So when obviously Renault dominated in the first part of the championship, then when Techeetah came in, they took the Renault customer powertrain, which you're quite entitled to do, and they did it better. They won the championship. Obviously, they then partnered with DS and had been dominant over the last 2 years. And now Nissan are sort of coming back, or the Edams team are coming back to try and be as good as Techeetah again. So it's sort of the pendulum's been swinging. But let's talk about Antonio Felix Costa in that first race. Him and Buemi made good progress. They were on fighting for the top 10. And then off TV, we didn't see it on the video footage, but Costa had a retirement. And just to explain what that was, a tiny chunk of rubber flicked up from his tyre, and on the outside of the car, they got a big red button that hits the sort of master reset. So the chunk of rubber hit that, shut the car down, and it also meant he lost brakes. And he was explaining after how very close he came to knocking Buemi off track as well and ending his race. So I think for the rivalry, it was probably good that didn't happen. And let's move on to race 2, I think, as well, in qualifying. And like you say, we had the big names right at the back of the grid again, and that's because the track evolution just took the times away from them, and those top 6 drivers at first went out all straight to the back of the grid. So this one was sort of more in their control. But again, I still see a shock. We've seen in the other 5 races or other 4 races in Berlin that, you know, Costa can take that Group 1 step. But on the extended track with that middle sector, which hadn't been used at all before over the few races, it really, really hurt the big names.
Yes, I think that probably there was someone adapting better to the new track layout, because yes, the 4 champions were out of qualifying in the first qualifying, but at the end, even in the second one, they couldn't really manage to have a decent lap time. And the drivers who were exceptionally on top during first qualifying, they could be there again, like René Rast, for example. Let's remember, he is one of the less experienced driver on the grid, but he's a great fighter, very used to the covered wheel racing, let's say, and stock car racing with DTM and things like that. And I remember I told you after last races that these kind of drivers probably would have had the chance to fight more because they had absolutely nothing to lose. And Ras, for example, was very good in the first qualifying, and he could repeat the performance even in the second qualifying. So that means that they probably the drivers on top, they could adapt themselves better to that racetrack. And I think that Techeetahs, they were lucky that this didn't happen in the races before, because then the titles could have been a little bit more in danger, even if the advantage of Costa was very big. But for example, Verne could lost the second place in the championship. And I think that at the end, when you race, you want the most you could achieve. And Techeetahs wanted also that second place that was lost because of missing probably focus, strategy and performance by their 2 drivers during the last races. But I think it was very good fun to see someone else on top, to see De Vries finally taking his first podium, and Mercedes dominating, which is something very new in Formula E, not really new in F1. So from one side, I hope that they could be on top even next year. On the other side, please.
Yeah, someone else.
Be everywhere. Yes, exactly. It's Formula One. It's enough for the moment.
Yeah. Well, you might have been right about René Rast, but I was certainly wrong about Mercedes winning that second race, because I thought with how Oliver Rowland had done in the first race, with Sebastian Buemi starting second, and what we've seen all season, which is Mercedes are good in qualifying, but their race pace it tends to deteriorate throughout the lap. So I thought with Buemi in second, he was definitely going to win this race. You know, I'd already written my report. I was already ready to, jump and say that this is Buemi's. He's won, and Nissans are on top at the end of the season. But it didn't turn out like that at all. Not only was Vandoorne quicker, but what we've seen from Buemi in these races has been his excellent energy management. He's gone into the final few laps with sort of 1% more, but he didn't have that. He was the opposite. In fact, 1% behind. 1% behind the Mercedes, which not only allowed Vandoorne clear to take his first win, but as you say, De Vries could pass Buemi late on to get second place. So not only was it a Mercedes win, a Mercedes won too.
Yes, and if you remember the last races, this happened also between De Vries and Oliver Rowland. So for sure there is an energy management in Mercedes that is working better during the race than in Idams, even if maybe it was a little bit more difficult for Mercedes to have top results this season. It was the first victory from Vandoorne, the first podium for De Vries, and for sure they are really very good drivers. But in this case, and in the last races here in Berlin with different layouts, they could find a better management. And I think that from that point of view, Nissan could learn something from them, because in the 2 races, first Rowland and then Buemi, they had exactly the same problem with the same driver and the same manufacturer. So there is always something to learn from the others.
Yeah, I don't think anyone should believe the press releases. Mercedes aren't strictly debutants in the series. They had HWA Race Lab come in to sort of prepare the water for them last season. It's allowed them to sort of really come good. They've made a few operational errors, overcalling Nick de Vries's battery, for instance, and costing a podium, but it all seemed to come really good at the end of the season in that final race. And let's wrap up a bit of the driver market as well, because while the cars were still doing their cool down lap, they'd just finished the race, they hadn't even got out the cars yet, Venturi announced that Felipe Massa, the 11-time Formula One race winner, he's out of a seat for next season. Is that something you were surprised by, really?
Maybe surprised by the timing, as you said, because it was really after the race had finished. But let's be honest, he didn't have results through these 2 seasons, and not just that, he was even slower than his teammate all the times. He could be 2 times in the points, just 1 podium in Monaco last year, and the confrontation between he and Mortara and his teammate was really bad for him, because he had like 40 points less than his teammate. So I think that was probably a common decision, because there was clearly something not working. Maybe there is still a good relationship between the team and the driver, but sometimes it just doesn't work. And in this case, it didn't work clearly.
Yeah, when Massa first came into Formula One, he was sort of he was called sort of a rally driver, because in Sauber he was constantly making tiny corrections to his steering wheel, and although he refined that style over the years, he was still erratic, a bit hit or miss, and so I don't think that sort of jagged style transferred all that well to Formula E. But it was good to have sort of such a high profile name in the championship. One other bit of news that it's not a surprise, we all knew was coming, but this morning as we record this, Michela, Pascal Wehrlein's been confirmed at Porsche. He replaces Neil Yarni, who had a really strong end to the season, finally came good in those last few races. But instead of being given a week of holiday to celebrate or whatever, Porsche swiftly come out and announced, no, Wehrlein's in for next season. How do you think he will do alongside Andre Lotterer?
Wehrlein has always been a very quick driver, and he's quite experienced in Formula E at the moment. He had a bad... he left quite bad Mahindra during the season, and I think I'm not surprised to see him back. I'm sorry, because I think that Neil Yarni and Lotterer as a couple of teammates were really good, and they had a very good fight in last race. But I think that Wehrlein can really give an additional value to the team, because he has experience, he is very quick. Maybe it's not easy for the other driver to have a good relationship with him as a teammate, but it's always good to have someone quick and experienced to take as a reference point. And Lotterer, is also used to have other kind of races. So Formula E is something very special and very particular to drive, because it's a heavy car, but at the same time it's a single seater. The energy management is not that easy. So it's like a different world from the other kind of racing. So if I were Lotterer, I would be happy to have someone more experienced in that sense, to learn something from.
Absolutely, Yarni, a brilliant sports car driver, successful at Le Mans, but didn't quite work out for him in Formula E, even though really nice guy. And I think he will still retain ties with Porsche. I think, we'll see him perhaps in the Formula E simulator as sort of a reserve driver, but that's his Formula E career. It looks like it's sort of more or less over for now, as is the season. 3 of these videos, 6 races, 9 days. I think it's time we both went and got a coffee or got some sleep and got back to normal.
Yes. It has been, from with this coronavirus situation, everything has been very heavy. But I think that this full immersion in Formula E of these days was pretty nice to go back to normality. And these races were very exciting. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what will happen next year.
Well, let's wrap it up there, and thank you very much for joining me once again to pick out those last 2 races.
Thank you, Matt. It was a pleasure.